Stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to get shot, someone's going to get killed. And it's not right.
That's one of the top election officials in Georgia, and he also happens to be a Republican. He's calling out the president and his supporters for their outrageous and frankly dangerous rhetoric because Trump can't admit he lost the state. Now, the man on your screen here, Brad Raffensperger, he's a Republican. He's also a Trump donor. He was called an enemy of the state by the same guy he gave money to and voted for. His crime? Doing his job as Georgia's Secretary of State and confirming that Trump lost and it was a clear and clean election. Now, he spoke to the Washington Post and he said, among other things, this, quote, "If Republicans don't start condemning this stuff, then I think they're really complicit in it. It's time to stand up and be counted. Are you going to stand up for righteousness? Are you going to stand up for integrity? Or are you going to stand for the wild mob? You wanted to condemn the wild mob when it was on the other side. What are you going to do when it's on our side?" Now, he's talking about people like Joe DeGenova. He is a Trump attorney who is competing with Rudy Giuliani for the title of most unhinged member of the bar. DeGenova recently went on to Newsmax and he threatened former cybersecurity head Chris Krebs, who was appointed and fired by Trump for saying the election was fair and secure.
Anybody who thinks that this election went well, like that idiot Krebs, who used to be the head of cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah, the guy that was on 60 Minutes last night.
That guy is a Class A moron. He should be drawn and quartered, taken out at dawn and shot.
And he's getting some help here when it comes to certain members of the media. Lou Dobbs. Believe it or not, Lou Dobbs used to be a respected journalist on places like CBS and CNN. He's now off the reservation. He's on Fox Business saying things like this.
The Attorney General of this country is not enforcing the law, and I don't know what he thinks he's presiding over, but it will not, I guarantee, William Barr, this, it will not be a quiet surrender of this constitutional republic.
He's got people sounding off, maybe not to that degree, but pretty close to it also in prime time on the Mother Network. Now, if you thought that Michael Flynn would lay low after the guy got pardoned by the president, you'd be wrong. The former national security advisor, remember that, national security advisor, who was fired by Trump after he admitted that he lied to the FBI, he is now calling for martial law so we can hold a new election. I kid you not. My next guest just wrote a piece called "The GOP's Shameful Embrace of Trump's Fake Election Fraud." Let me bring in A.B. Stoddard. She's associate editor at RealClearPolitics. And A.B., you write in the beginning of your piece that, you know, Trump knows he lost, but he's playing the con. There's a story out now that apparently in a closed-door meeting with Mitch McConnell and aides, that Trump praised the recently elected QAnon believer congresswoman out of Georgia, and he talked about the QAnon crowd as people who believed in good government. Are we sure that Trump really gets it, that he lost, and he lost fairly, or does he really believe in this conspiracy?
Well, Richard, thank you for having me. I think that President Trump is happy to be raising $170 million, 75% of it, which for small donors up to $5,000 is not going for recounts or lawsuits that are going nowhere. It's going to his future political pursuits, for staff and travel for a leadership PAC that's going to keep him in the spotlight and keep him as a kingmaker, lording over the entire Republican Party and all the people who want to replace him in 2024. I think the reason that he talks up QAnon and people who believe in conspiracy theories is because they are a receptive crowd. So he knows of the millions and millions and millions of people, a record number of people who voted for him in the election. He can persuade many of them through his Twitter feed and through far-right allies in the media and on social media to believe that this was indeed stolen from him and that they will believe it for years to come. And the problem is twofold. It's not only that election officials across this country could be in physical danger from these people that believe these conspiracies he's stoking, and it could lead to violence, but just the remaining faith that we had as an electorate across this country in our election system that was tested so much because of what the Russian interference led to in 2016, whatever was left, it is now forever threatened by the fact that the president is telling these people it wasn't a free and fair election. This means not only that this is, obviously an attack on the legitimacy of a Biden presidency, but any future president, even a Republican one. And it will mean that millions of people in this country don't believe that we run a free and fair election system, which, thanks to the Department of Homeland Security, in the face of a pandemic and many external foreign threats, was the most protected and secure and successful election in U.S. history, something to be thankful for and to be proud of.
And it was an amazing accomplishment. I think it's going a little bit undernoticed here because of all the craziness surrounding it. But listen, you speak to more Republicans probably than I do off camera or, when the microphone's off. They can't stand privately Trump. And I've even spoken to folks that are close to McConnell who said, yeah, he wanted the judges here, but he's not sad to see him go. Then why the silence and the complicity in that he wants Georgia more than anybody, maybe with the exception of those two Republicans hoping to keep their jobs? They're reaping what they sow right now, because now you got this situation where Trump's going to go down there this weekend. He's going to claim that he was defrauded, their state in the election, and some of those people are going to be like, fine, why would I vote if it's all rigged? Part of me thinks he deserves what he gets, but when will he speak up, even out of self-interest?
But this is why it's so outrageous what they're doing with their silence. They are hoping that Trump will just go away, that this will all be over soon on January 20th, Inauguration Day, that by January 5th, they could move on from this because they hope to retain a Senate majority and secure the election of those two incumbent Republican senators in the runoff. So it's all about keeping power in the Senate, and by saying things like, well, it's time to start the transition, and not actually agreeing out loud the way that Sidney Powell does or people on One America News Network do with the conspiracy theories themselves, that they're clean from the stench of this complicity. But they're not defending democracy, and they remain complicit because they're not telling the voters they need in that runoff in Georgia, or the voters that supported President Trump all around the country, that they're being lied to, and that the president is raising money off of a scam that they're being silent on. And so again, this is long-term damage to the system. This is putting power before country. This is putting party before country. And yes, everything they've told you is true. They want him to go away. They want this to just end, and they think it's just a few more weeks of him being delusional and having tantrums. But the long-term damage and the complicity that they will really own is what is at stake here. And that's why you heard Gabriel Sterling in Georgia saying, not only, Mr. President, you've been silent on the potential violence you might be inspiring because of the death threats we see to all these election officials, but senators, he called them out. He said, for those of you who have not said one damn word, you are complicit. And that's why it's a long time, Richard, between now and January 5. And what is going on in the minds of the people who believe this, and the people writing checks to President Trump, in a 46-minute video he put out yesterday at taxpayer cost, with the power of the presidential seal for propaganda purposes. We're going to be going down a very long road between now and January 5th of destruction. And that's why their silence, even if it's, as a means to an end, just to get rid of him and make it all go away, and they hope it'll calm down, that doesn't mean that they can stand up on January 6th and say, Joe Biden won a free and fair election in an incredible system that worked in a pandemic, and that we owe our thanks to millions of nameless Americans who made this happen, and we can all believe in the system again. Do we really think they're going to get up on January 6th and say that?
Well, here's my point, though. I agree 100% with what you said about the long-term damage and the ethical issue. And you swear an oath, to protect this country here when like we saw yesterday with Senator-elect Kelly. But I'm talking even transactional politics. They got to look, and I know every state's different, but Romney and Sass haven't been crushed because they said, come on now, this is crazy. Albeit they stuck a toe in, not the whole foot. Why wouldn't McConnell bring them all together and say, listen, guys, if we don't do something together, this guy's going to run us for the next 4 years. At least let's get ahead of this right now. Because the last thing they need is, imagine him firing Barr before, the runoff in Georgia or whatever the president's capable of doing, let alone the pardons that are coming down the pike that will hurt the Republican Party. My point is, isn't it in their best political interest, taking even morals and political courage out of it, to say, let's get together here, create no daylight, and say enough is enough?
No, they believe that they have to pander to the Stop the Steal crowd in Georgia to get enough votes to get Loeffler and Perdue across the line. It is all about the seats in Georgia. That's why they're looking the other way and pretending they didn't see the 46-minute video yesterday, and they, just hope that everyone's going to, vote in Georgia on January 5th. It is all about the runoff. They do not believe that if they came together with a unified front and said this was a free and fair process, but we really need you to be the last line of defense against a Biden administration by reelecting Senators Perdue and Loeffler. They believe that the president's supporters in Georgia will stay home if they back off of his conspiracy theory and his grievance. And so that's why they're trying to straddle. They're not saying it's not true, but they're not saying it's true. And they really hope that the voters in Georgia are going to turn out for the runoff, even though, as you heard last weekend, they said to the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, if this has been decided, why would we turn out? If our vote isn't good and the system's broken, why would we turn out? So he is really hindering their chances in the runoff. And instead of breaking with him, because he's doing that, they're sort of holding the bomb, hoping it doesn't go off by January 5.
And I just want to hammer one point that AB made before. We did a lot on this program about people who went to Trump University and were defrauded. And by and large, these are people who couldn't afford to throw that money down the drain here for something that everyone knew that was involved in, was a hustle. These are people writing checks that aren't going to change any results in this election. It's going directly to Donald Trump's pocket for other political purposes well after this election is over here. And to me, again, for people to stand by and let Americans be hustled or conned again is almost as shameful as what we're seeing right now, even with the election itself. But AB, I appreciate the time. A great piece. People should check it out in Real Clear Politics. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Up next, the pandemic is, of course, also causing financial hardship across this country. That financial crisis is also helping to spread the virus as people lose their jobs, then their homes. After the break, the UCLA researcher who says evictions not only causing thousands of people to become sick, but also causing thousands of deaths, nearly 500,000 COVID cases as a consequence.